I love the story of Robin Hood, not because he robbed from the rich to give to the poor, but he robbed from the rich who first robbed from the poor to
good.
to give the poor back what was theirs to begin with, the honest reward for their labor and their industry, even if they were peasants. So I always believed that my purpose in life would be to do justice, for people to get what they deserve, and for me to do what I can to see that that happens.
Hello, and welcome to Along the Way Life's Journey. I'm your host, Carl Bucciolato. Let's get the next journey started. You know, in life, you meet many people. Some are just passing chance encounters. Yet some people seem to have always been there, like a neighbor or a family member. Others seem to be destined by ripple encounters. Our guest today is Dr. Jerome Huyler, PhD. Jerome is a former assistant professor at Seton Hall University. He earned his PhD in political science from the New School University and his BA from Brooklyn College, which I know very well, where he majored in philosophy. He is also the highly acclaimed author of Locke in America, the Moral Philosophy of the Founding Era, and Everything You Have, The Case Against Welfare. He also has a strong musical history, which we'll discuss more of. And back to how we meet people who influence our lives, Jerome was introduced to me by my good friend and prior guest, Ed Pozzuoli, who has known Jerry all his life. Two old friends from Brooklyn. And now they introduce him to yet another Brooklyn guy, me. Jerry, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Carl. Thank you for having me today.
So may I begin this by saying, is it proper, sir? May I call you Jerry, because it is Dr. Jerome. And I was raised in a traditional fashion. I'm supposed to ask permission. So may I call you Jerry?
Yes, you may. Yes, you may. For many years, when I answered my phone, somebody calls me up. If they say Jerry, they want to talk about music. If they say Jerome, they want to talk about academics. So I knew how to answer.
This is one of those things I'm intrigued about you. With you're a right lobal intellectual, a left lobal creative. You got all these two things going on inside of you over there, which is kind of like myself also. So I think I said that to you once before. This is going to be not a two-way, but a four-way conversation because we have the ability to think beyond numerous boxes.
Yes, I use my left side of the brain and the right side of the brain, but not at the same time.
That's good. Otherwise, you'd be schizophrenic. Okay, so Jerry, tell us a little bit about your background and yourself. I know you were raised in Brooklyn, but for the viewing audience now, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get into some of the academics, and then we'll get into some other things.
Well, when I was young, my heroes were all the Western heroes that paraded across my TV screen every day. Davy Crockett, Robin Hood. I love the story of Robin Hood, not because he robbed from the rich to give to the poor, but he robbed from the rich who first robbed from the poor to give the poor back what was theirs to begin with, the honest reward for their labor and their industry, even if they were peasants. So I always believed that my purpose in life would be to do justice, for people to get what they deserve, and for me to do what I can to see that that happens. I met Ayn Rand in college, or was introduced to her works by Ed and his brother Joe. And what she taught me is that the way to fight for justice is not just to be a cop or a judge. They fight for justice, or they should fight for justice. But the most important way to fight for justice is to save society by spreading good ideas to replace bad ideas. And bad ideas are almost all we hear today from the mainstream media and our elected political leaders. So I realized that what I want to do is learn everything I can about the history, the philosophy of Western civilization, to see exactly where we went wrong and how we got from that day to this, and to do all in my power to spread good ideas, to get rid of the bad ideas that are now infesting our society.
Yeah, and there's an old saying that says if we don't learn and understand history, we're doomed to repeat it again. And it seems like we're certainly repeating it again. It may not be as blatantly obvious as the 1930s and the 20s with the rise of socialism, and the 30s with fascism, but this world is in a serious issue right now, isn't it?
It certainly is. The founders would study history to learn the lessons of history, to avoid the problems of the past happening again in the future.
Right.
And they said very simply, whatever will happen already has. That is why we have to learn the lessons of history. And we do have to learn the lessons of history today more than ever before.
Yeah. I lived a long time, and I've seen a lot of paradigm shifts in this country where people have changed how they think politically, sociologically, faith-based. A lot of changes occurred in our nation where, 50 years ago, you would never hear a young person who didn't understand the history of the country and not be able to tell you the things about the revolution, the things about World War II. I watched a TV show the other night, and I was astounded to see this reporter was on the beach in Coney Island over the Memorial Day weekend, and he was interviewing young people, looked like college-age people. They were not ratty-looking kids. They were good-looking kids, groomed nicely in bathing suits, ready to go have a fun weekend. And he asked them some very simple questions. Who were the opponents in World War II? They didn't know. Who won World War II? They didn't know. Who were the people that were the founders of our nation? Where did they come from primarily? They didn't know. They had no idea about the Constitution. They had no idea about, what happened on D-Day, the 6th of June. We have really abandoned a whole generation of youngsters by allowing Common Core and all that progressive nonsense to take hold of their minds and fail to teach them, because we have a generation that's uneducated. They're illiterate. Not that they're stupid, they're illiterate.
Yeah, history is history. It's the past. In the past, history was taught in schools. The founders had a very, very important concept that they said would be required if America was to stay a free country: a virtue for liberty, an education for liberty, that people have to understand what makes liberty possible and what sustains it. And that has been totally lost by the progressives,
Right.
who the last thing they want to inculcate is American history and the values and traditions and institutional relationships that have given us our freedoms.
Because it's those values and that marching order, that internal marching call, that has made this nation the greatest nation in history. When you think about what we've accomplished, where we've come from, and what we've done virtually to save the world over and over again, after one demagogue after the next and destruction after the next. And it's only the power of the United States, really, that rebuilt all of Europe after both of the wars.
That's true. The only thing we asked for from Europe was enough ground to bury our dead,
That's
our
right.
military dead.
That's right.
It's amazing. There is no education for liberty, for virtue. There is no tradition. And that's what we will need to have ultimately if the country is to be saved. We have to retrace, recapture the ideas that energized the founding fathers. If we want to have a country, we can't just go by the Constitution, because these Constitution amendments and the Bill of Rights, they can be negated. The Second Amendment, they're trying to negate that now. There's a war on religion by the progressive left. So we can't rely on just the Constitution to protect us. We have to enliven the ideas that were behind the Constitution, and especially the ideas of the Declaration of Independence. People have to understand that they have rights, that they have a right to gain, keep, use, trade, or otherwise dispose of their freely acquired possessions. It's not automatic. Right now, people don't have a sense they have a right
That's
to
right.
keep the just fruits of their labor. They believe implicitly that in a democracy, Congress can do anything it pleases by majority vote, by voice vote. And that's not true. Congress power is limited. And I know exactly where the limits of limited government are. And that's what I want to share with the American people. Let me go through that because
Yes, please do, because I know that there is certain things that are happening right now that I fear for, because I think I'm beginning to believe the hype that, at the midterm election, we're going to have a sweep and change the control of the Senate and the House if it's not stolen. We're going to have a new government in there, but it's going to be headed by a lame duck president. But there are two places that are very, very dangerous right now that could happen before the midterm election. And they are, number one, the elimination of the filibuster, and number two, packing the courts. If they push that stuff through, we're in serious trouble.
And as we just learned this week, the January 6th hearings that will begin on nationwide TV tomorrow, Thursday, the goal there is to convince the American people that we no longer need the Electoral College.
Yes.
That we should elect our congressmen, our senators, our president by majority vote. And isn't it interesting that we have tens of thousands
open borders
of immigrants coming to this country,
right,
settled in our major cities, and the next move, and it's already started, is to give illegal immigrants the right to vote, and that will seal the fate of the country and will keep Republicans out of office forever. But here's where we went wrong as a country, and it happened very early. Thomas Jefferson wrote in the Declaration of Independence, quote, "Governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed."
That's right.
But there is only so much to which the governed can consent. You don't have the right to take what belongs to me. I don't have the right to take away or give away what belongs to you. So how on earth can we, the people, give government the power to take from Peter to pay Paul, or take from Paul?
But they're doing it anyway. Just look at what they've done this past week with the waiver of student loans. They're taking our money to pay off other people's loans.
Well, yes, that's the latest innovation. But the principle that I just stated, that government was meant to be a protector, not a provider. That is the fundamental difference. But that principle was violated when the second bill passed by Congress was signed into law by the first president of the United States. This was the Tariff Act of 1789. The second bill, George Washington signed into law. It was lobbied for by domestic manufacturers. They said, we are infant industries, we need protection from foreign competition, and George Washington gave them that protection. They were able to raise their prices behind the tariff walls. That did not help Southern planters, Western farmers, shipbuilders, seaport merchants, and thousands employed in the dockside, carting, and maritime industries. So no longer were people equal. Government assumed for itself the power to pick winners and losers, to benefit some, the lobbyists in Washington, who belonged, in this case, to the domestic manufacturers. And here is the principle by which we lost the rest of the country. Once a nation decides that some of its citizens have a right not to go out and get, but to lobby Congress and be given, the country faces two daunting questions. Who else should be given? And how much should everyone get? Well, there's only one answer: politics.
Politics.
And that is how corruption seeped in over the years, over the decades, over the centuries, and it's where we are today.
You know, you're right, because even I, who lived a long time, I look at the news and I see everything that's going on, and I repeat to you what I was aghast to see in young people. And I think to myself, well, that's not an easy task to get them to begin to understand and think about these things in the proper fashion so they can make an educated comment, the thought and the comment, because we are now competing for their thoughts and their attention with all of the buzz and the media and the social media connections and all these things. Every one of those kids, I assure you, could tell me every name of a particular song or what the Kardashians wore for the third wedding they had. You know, all this trivia stuff that's been pumped into them as a distraction from the realities of life, really.
Well, that is a blessing in disguise, I think. First of all, let me say that the saving grace for this country is the fact that about 35% of Americans have ever been to college. College is where you lose your common sense.
Yes.
Or as Bertrand Russell,
within the last 100 years, but before.
Yeah. Well, nowadays, it's where you go to lose your common sense and to believe all these highfalutin philosophies and theories that make no sense at all. Bertrand Russell, the philosopher, the early 20th century, said, "Men are born ignorant, not stupid. They are made stupid by education."
Right.
Never has that been so true.
Right.
But as I say, only 35% or so of Americans have ever been to college. That leaves a majority without having been indoctrinated and brainwashed and propagandized. Also, the second thing is, yes, Americans paid most attention to the things that were closest to them: their faith, their family, their friends, their careers. That's as it should be. And the freedoms of this country allowed them to do it and get away with it. They are not allowed to get away with it any longer because of the price they are paying for the detrimental policies that are being implemented in their name by their elected officials. So I've been saying this for 35 years, literally. Once Americans' backs are against the wall, once they are facing hardship that is so deep and so great, then we'll see what the American people are made of. Once they realize the majority can no longer afford to remain silent, and once they say, what's going on here? Why is this happening to us? Why are gas prices? Why is crime? Why are open borders doing so much harm to the country? Then we have a chance to reach the American people, because their common sense will kick in and they'll realize they can no longer afford to remain silent, that they have to get involved, get engaged.
Well, the good news is, with all the bad news, we seem to be rushing to that point. You look at the election results in California and around certain states this past week. We're rushing towards that point, and America is really at the verge of saying enough is enough. I think it's and if they continue with this pursuit against Amendment 2 and the attempts to confiscate. I mean, Beto O'Rourke, who thinks himself of a genius over there, the guy in Texas, he never had a job in his life. And I saw him do an interview recently, and he says, yeah, we're going to take all the guns away. And the reporter says, you really think you're going to be able to do that? He says, yes, the American people want it. They keep telling me, come and get them. He has no idea what he's saying. There are 380 million guns in this country. Come and get them.
Yep. And a Supreme Court behind it, and the Heller decision.
Absolutely.
Everyone has a right to own a gun for self-defense, not to join a militia.
That's right.
But that's what I'm saying. The common sense of the American people will kick in. And the more brazen the leftist woke mob gets, the more Americans they will wake up. It was very encouraging last night. Boudin, the prosecutor in San Francisco,
Yeah.
got
Got
booted
kicked
from his
out.
job
Right.
in California,
Right.
of all things. And of course, last year's election in November in Virginia was another sign. You don't play games with Mama Bear's cubs.
Now look at
Uh,
what they did this week. I can't believe that they have the Democrats, the progressives in power, seem to have no concern about what the public image of their actions are. This week, they said publicly that they were virtually going to hold school lunches hostage,
Hostage.
if hostage basically, if they don't teach the tranny things in the schools.
If they don't, specifically, if they don't let children decide which
Yeah,
bathroom they want to use,
yeah.
they will withhold funding. That was the most encouraging thing I have heard all week, because that is something that will knock the sense.
Oh, Mama Bear go
So
crazy over
that. Absolutely. First, you're giving something away, and then no, you have to obey these terms if you want to keep getting the something. That is so wrong on so many levels, and it's going to rankle the American people. They can't help but putting their foot in it every time they make a move.
Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot, and I'm going to ask you to think about this question, and we'll come back to it. You must have a recommendation of what we, as citizens of America, especially senior citizens of America, can do to help impact that change and bring the news and the word to the younger generations to compete with the craziness. Okay, there's got to be a way for us to bring them back and take action. Now, I want you to think about that, because first I want you to tell me about your musical background, because I think you used that in a very similar way. I know that you were a DJ for years.
30 years. 30 years. I did more than 100 parties a year for 30 years. And the strange thing is, my own musical tastes diverged very much from Ed's. Ed became a spectacular, astounding jazz drummer. I don't see any difference between his playing, and he sent me some video recordings of his sitting in at his restaurant. I can't fathom the difference between him and the incredible drummer who was our drum teacher, Dick Bennett, for many years. That he really excels. But my taste in music went in a completely different direction. I had no use for jazz, really, but I loved R&B music, reggae, calypso, the genres I became exposed to in Haitian music, which is zouk and compa, and Latin music, salsa, merengue, bachata, cumbia, vallenato, all of those. And so when I became a DJ in 1983, what happens is I was working at a hotel for 2 years as a musician. I led the lounge band, and there was a show band. And then this hotel up in the Catskills went from two bands to one band, and they wanted to try a DJ. They tried some local DJs who didn't know any of the music that was right. So they called me up one day in 1982, and they asked me if I wanted to be a DJ. I loved the area. I had many friends in the area. I loved the hotel, 4-star cuisine. So I took a job as a DJ for 2 years using their equipment. They gave me a budget to buy music every week when I went back into the city. So I built my own library of music. And then when I came back after Labor Day to New York, I made a couple of phone calls to see if I could get DJ work in the city. My first two calls, I landed two DJ parties right away. So I went to work the first day as a DJ, first day, December 15th, 1983. And I did not own speakers when I got up that morning. I bought the speakers at a music store on the way to my first job. I did the job and it worked out very well. And I said, you know something, why be a struggling musician when I could be a successful DJ? And it was after that that I picked up the R&B music and everything, that I realized that's what I want, even more than pop music. And for the next 30 years, I did 100 or more parties a year, except for 9/11, 2001, when all the parties were canceled after the attack on the towers. But for 30 years, up until 2013, I was doing more than 100 parties a year. And often, here I am writing a book called The Case Against Welfare, being called a racist my entire life. And I was very often the only white person at the parties I was playing at, or me and a couple of waitresses or something, because I was doing the rap music, the R&B music, going all through the years, oldies parties, new parties, and playing Latin music and reggae and calypso, and playing it like I was born to play this music, and had a very great following, got callbacks very, very, very often. And yet I wrote the book, The Case Against Welfare.
Okay, so here we go now. This is the right lobe, left lobe in action. Here's the question. At the same time, while you were creating all that music, integrating with people that you might say were not your people, but they were your people because they motivated to you. You fed them with the music. Now you stand in the front of the class. Now you're during the day, your day job, you're the professor at Seton Hall. And there must have been some students in that classroom that began to relate to you and see you more clearly when you gave them a little touch of that, because I venture to say none of the other professors had that ace up their sleeve. I mean, that was really a coup.
That is so true. As a matter of fact, the first day of class of every single class I taught, as long as I was teaching at Seton Hall, the first day of class, at first I brought in my boombox to play a song, an R&B tune called No Scrubs. And the chorus goes, it's sung by a woman. The chorus goes, I don't want no scrub. A scrub is a guy can't get no love from me. Hanging on the passenger side of his best friend's ride, trying to holler at me. Classes went berserk when they actually heard this song, that the professor knows the song cold. And I was dancing to it and everything. Broke the ice immediately of every course I taught. And the point was how important concepts are. When we learn concepts, we can protect ourselves from so much grief and aggravation. You know what a scrub is. You know what he looks like, and you know he's up to no good. He's going to promise you the world. He's going to promise you dinner at the best steakhouses in Manhattan, and you're never going to get Brooklyn Popeyes restaurant with take-home chicken. And that made an impression. And I continued to teach concepts, learn these concepts, tie them to reality, and you will protect yourself from a lot of aggravation that you don't need.
And I could see from your emotion, you really cared for these kids. That's why you're welling up right now, because you were giving them a life lesson. You weren't only teaching them about a page in a book. You weren't only teaching them how to listen to a song. You were giving them life lessons.
That's exactly right. I taught a course for 7 years called Journey of Transformation. I treated it as a popular course in moral philosophy, to learn the mistakes that people make, to learn the importance of being honest, to see the world as it is, not pretend that what is isn't, or that what isn't is. Because how do you expect to deal with reality effectively if you're not even looking at it, if you're not even seeing it for what it is?
Right.
I taught the importance of independence in this course, Journey of Transformation, to stand on your own feet, to look at the world through your own eyes, and to decide for yourself what is good and what is bad, what is right and what is wrong, not depend on the opinions of others. that it's your opinion that matters most. And I hope these lessons came through. I think they did in many, many cases, not in all cases. But these are the most important things young people have to understand.
I salute you. I do, because I think that's the kind of things that if more, I don't know how many do or don't, but if more teachers and professors had that mindset of how to impact a person so that they could learn self-respect, independence, the ability to think and come to reasonable thought, then their lives will be totally different. They'll make a whole different meaning when they go forward, when they're no longer in your class.
And today, young people, they're not even learning what their jobs are. The job of a young person is to learn to read, to write, do arithmetic, and to think critically. And that is the last thing that today's teachers want to impart in their children.
Oh, sad. All right. Now I'm coming back to the question. I gave you time to think about it. I distracted you a little bit with a little course of action there. See what I did there? Now, we're coming back to the question. You and I clearly are of the generation that has received greatly from this country. We have had education, we've had exposure, we have had travel, we've had opportunity to taste the good spots, the sweet spots of life. And we've also seen and probably experienced some of the bitter spots of life that are painful. How do we, as a group, as a people, reach out with a course of action to reach the young people and teach them these things? Because they're not getting it anywhere. The media is distracting it completely to another way. Do we write letters to editors? Do we do more podcasts like this? Do we create more available literature that people can get for practically nothing with ebooks online? What do we do?
All of the above, of course. But I have set my sights on one particular goal. Saving this country is the simplest thing in the world if everyone does but one thing. And it isn't a great sacrifice. It doesn't take a half a lifetime to accomplish. If every single American would learn who their elected representatives are and start a nationwide grassroots letter writing campaign demanding that their congressmen and senators, especially those who sit on the Appropriations Committee and the Budget Committee in each house, demanding that they begin cutting programs, closing agencies and departments and bureaus by the bushel, we can save the country. In other words, the growth of government is why taxes are so high, why the national debt is so great, $30 trillion, why the Federal Reserve has to create so much money in order to finance all of the runaway spending, why inflation is raging now and eating the substance out of all of our lives, and why so many businesses are standing at the brink of bankruptcy because of the costs of complying with useless, worthless regulations. So that's what the growth of government has created, all of these evils. All the American people have to do is write their congressmen, their senators, and say, start cutting programs by the bushel, close agencies. Why not start with the Department of Education? It spends $72 billion a year, and in promoting critical race theory, global climate change, the transgender agenda, it is not doing a single school-age child any good whatsoever. Who needs it? It's just a jobs program for leftist radicals who get out of college and want to sign on to the mission to destroy.
I agree completely. And I think we should follow that up with the IRS, the FDA, the EPA, loaded. It's a behemoth with the more people employed there doing nothing that gets no action done. No action. All you have to do is look at the baby milk scandal that just happened with the FDA. They were notified last year. Took 3 months to even pick up a call and ask what's going on. Disgraceful.
Absolutely. And well, I would go after the Department of Commerce, the Department of Agriculture, the Department of Labor. Of course, all they have turned into are clientele agencies
Right.
passing bill and handing out money to their
Right.
respective clients.
Right.
Commerce, agriculture, farm subsidies.
Completely agree.
That
Completely agree.
that is all, and it's all corruption. It's government helping some people at other people's expense. I like to say this. I recently composed this. Every American has a constitutional right to petition government for a redress of grievances, but lobbying Congress for other people's money is not that.
No, that's a commercial entity.
Exactly. Commercial and corrupt as can be, and they get away with it. That's why it's not only the Democrats, the Republicans play the
Sure.
same game.
Sure.
The Republican rhinos,
Yeah.
they have to be primaried out. And thank heavens we have Donald Trump, who's running around the country with his
I agree.
rallies,
I agree.
introducing and giving name recognition
I agree.
to the to Trumplicans, not rhino Republicans.
And I think that if we ever got term limits in place, we would find a completely different. Either they're going to rush to get as much graft as possible in the first term that they're there, or they're going to recognize they're going to be held accountable in a few short years, and they'll do their job instead of the nonsense they do.
Carl, I'm happy we found something to disagree about.
Oh, good. Tell me how we disagree.
I am against term limits because if a congressman knows that after his second term or his third term, he's not going to be able to run for re-election, what's he going to do? He's going to aspire to become a consultant or a lawyer or a lobbyist for the companies who he's been helping out all this time. So he's going to be tempted to give them even more.
Then the first of my scenarios are true, that they're going to become more crooked because they have a shorter term of window to deal with.
No, not more crooked, just as crooked.
Just as crooked.
Not going to solve anything.
Fair enough.
And it creates another problem also. It's with all these people, with this constant turnaround because of term limits, you have the staff in control.
Right.
It's the permanent staff who are going to jump from politician to politician because they know where the bodies are buried. They know how to get things done. And so the politicians who are elected are going to be even more dependent on their staffs to get things done. And the staffs now are going to be lobbied by the corporations and everyone else.
I have to imagine exactly what's happening in the White House right now.
Yeah,
the staff is running the whole deal.
Oh yeah, that is so.
Exactly what's happening.
And it's Obama staff also.
Yeah, well, it all started before him, but he really put it in place, that underworld community that exists in the shape that it does right now. He and his Holder, what was his title? Eric Holder. You know, they put together all this collusion of the security agencies for the benefit of the party, not the government or the people, but for the party. You know, terrible thing that happened there. And hopefully we'll see change. I believe that in our lifetime we will see change. But I agree with you. It has to start at the grassroots. We have to be diligent as citizens because that's the price we have to pay for freedom. Young men, we just saw D-Day, young men 18, 20 years old gave their lives going on the beaches in Normandy. That's the price they paid for our freedom. We have to pay our price for freedom by being diligent to these things and doing the things that we're supposed to do as aware citizens and maintain that freedom. We can't just stand in the corner and do nothing. Was it Baumhammer who said in Germany, you know, when they came for the gypsies, nobody did anything. When they came for the intellectuals, nobody did anything. When they came for the Jews, nobody did anything. When they came for me, there was nobody left to do anything. You know,
exactly right.
We got to do our thing.
And the crazy thing is that we have enough freedom in this country to put a stamp on a letter or to make a phone call to our elected representatives and express our consternation at what they are doing, and look into what they are doing, and having investigative journalists expose the benefits that the congressmen and senators are giving to these special interests. That would get us mad by writing letters. I once read that if a congressman gets about 12 letters from constituents, he's going to change his vote. Just
From a constituent. Or
yeah,
no,
from
12 people.
constituents.
Just 12 people.
Write him a letter saying, I don't agree with this. He's going to think hard because he knows behind those 12
Well,
letters.
I could do that. I have more personalities than 12.
And that's all it would take to, and like I say, all the lobbyists in Washington won't protect an office holder from an engaged electorate that demands action.
Absolutely. I agree. So, okay. So we're at 42 minutes. We have a cutoff at 45. So we have like 3 minutes. I'm going to give you amazing how fast the time went by.
Yeah, that is.
It really is amazing, right?
Yeah.
We'll do it again. But right for today, we have to close down. I want to give you a couple of minutes to say anything you feel like saying, anything you want to, if there are people that you want to remember that maybe influenced you and motivated you in your life to think of. I know you said it, Ayn Rand, and that you give thanks to Ed and Joe for introducing you to her, but certainly along your career, people have come about to influence you.
Yeah. Well, what I'd rather do is rather let the reviewers know what led me to this, besides my early childhood wanting to do justice, wanting to find a way to create justice.
Okay.
In college, I met John Locke, the English philosopher, at the same time I was reading Ayn Rand. So I wanted to figure out how much that Ayn Rand discovered was previously discovered by John Locke. Did he have the same sense in all the branches of philosophy that Ayn Rand developed? And what I learned is that he did. His ideas were scattered in different places. He wasn't as systematic as Ayn Rand was, but Ayn Rand had fulfilled the Lockean tradition. And the Lockean tradition is what made America what it was and what it could be, what it could still be. So the first thing is a letter writing campaign to demand to our politicians defund big government. That's the message. Defund big government. But ultimately, if we are to save the country, we're going to have to restore the idea that we have natural, inalienable, inherent, and indescribable rights, that they belong to us. They are ours. We are born with them. Reason gives them to us. In other words, let me quote from John Locke for just a minute. He said, the state of nature, a state where there's no government yet, has a law of nature to govern it. And reason, which is that law, teaches all mankind who will but consult it, that being all equal and independent, no one ought to harm another in his life, health, liberty, or possessions. That is what Americans have to rediscover if the country ultimately is to be saved. Because we can go up and down. We can write letters. We can start cutting programs. But until people understand that they have rights that no one, especially not government, can violate, then we will have a country. So those are the two goals that I have, to teach Americans that they have the greatest say-so over their elected officials, and that they have natural rights which no one can ever violate.
I completely agree. And I think that's a marching order that I'm happy to have on this podcast, because recently we've been having 1,500 viewers of each show that we've had, and it goes out to all English-speaking countries in the world. Wow. So, and it's getting bigger and bigger. So I think it's important that these are the kind of things that we say as representatives, not only of this show, but of our generation, who realizes that we have to do our share. And what you've outlined is simple to do. Simple to do. If you just get yourself Get yourself off the couch. Stop being a person that says, "Oh well, tomorrow or someone else will do it." There's no one else. It's
If
this
20 million people spent a half hour a day
amazing
learning who their congressman is, learning who the members of the
Amazing.
appropriations committees
Imagine
are.
what could be done.
Amazing, because they are chicken. They are scared of the American people. That's why they put so much propaganda, indoctrination, political correctness, which is nothing but censorship. They want to silence us. If they hear from us, they will run like rabbits for the shelter and do our bidding.
Completely agree. Jerry, I really enjoyed having this conversation. We've had a conversation before that was not quite as in depth as this one, but this one really got into a number of places, and I think are very important. I invite you to come back again on the show. We'll do it in a month or so. We'll give people a chance to resonate and react to this one. Then we'll do it again and we'll talk about other things. Maybe we'll make it a habit. Who knows? Maybe we'll invite Ed to join us so we'll have a three-way combo going.
I accept your terms.
Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining our show today. I hope it was something that was valuable to you. I hope it resonated to you, because if this kind of thinking doesn't resonate to you, I don't know what can. This is what life really is about. It really is not about the daily news on Channel 7. It really is not about my golf score. It isn't about any of that stuff. It's how do we, as Americans, preserve what this country was founded for and has accomplished over hundreds of years, and stop it from being degenerated and destroyed from the inside. We have a job to do. Pick up your pen, go to your computer, find out who your local representatives are, get their addresses. Be a regular, constant subscriber to them. Send them letters every week. Send them a postcard every day. Send them a card saying, "I'm watching you," and let them know we're here, because this is our country.
And let's start a nationwide grassroots movement to begin with, closing the Department of Education. It's not doing anyone ever any good. The mama bears across the country know how destructive modern education is. They're taking their students out of the public schools in droves. Now the next step is starting the conversation, a brand new conversation in this country. How do we slash government? How to reduce its spending? How do we then lower taxes, pay back the national debt, end the deficit spending? It's all in our power.
Right, because we are the people. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. Remember, we come out with a new show every Wednesday morning. And if you like Dr. Jerome here, write it. Let me know. Give us comments. Tell us what you want to hear more of. And I leave you with one message that I leave you with every week. Tell someone you love them today. Thank you for tuning into the show. I hope that it resonated with you. It certainly did with me. And I hope it encouraged you to realize the true power of your story. As a reminder, new episodes will be released Wednesday mornings on your favorite podcast apps, and also on YouTube as well. Be sure to like, subscribe, and turn your notification button on to ensure that you receive updates on new episode releases. I'm grateful for your reviews and your support. The love is certainly felt. Keep it coming. You can reach out to connect with me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, or stop by my website to everypageatturning.com. All links are clickable in the show notes for quick access. Do you think that you or someone you know may be our most inspiring guest yet? Let's hope so. Click on our contact page and get in touch on my website and share your story. I look forward to reading each one personally. My best-selling book, To Every Page a Turning, which was published by Mascot Books, is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, and many more popular book retailers. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Till next time, remember that every day is a new opportunity to write your new page in your incredible journey. And it is incredible. You're the only one who has it.